Jeff, thank you so much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership.
My
But
pleasure.
before we walk into the future, can you please tell us a little bit about your own background? What was your dream career when you grew up?
Uh, my dream career was to be a rock star.
Okay.
I was uh, I was a music major in college. I played the piano. I loved to sing. I loved music. So yeah, early career desires was to be a musician. Obviously, that didn't become reality.
Right. And tell us who inspired you in your early days?
Um, I think I would say various relatives were very inspiring. I had an uncle who was a very successful professor of psychology, and he inspired me early on to study and learn about psychology. My father was a pianist, so I learned a little bit about music from him and a grandmother. Yeah, so family members. Um, but then I also had an early I had two things. I had a high school teacher who was very inspiring, and made me have inspired an interest in philosophy when I was very young. It was very early to
Yeah.
start studying things like that, but he was inspirational about ideas. And so I had a high school teacher, and then I had my first boss when I graduated from college, and I went to work at a company called Booz Allen and Hamilton, consulting firm. I was working in HR, and I had
Right.
an African American boss who was just incredibly talented, eloquent, compassionate, a great role model. So I was lucky at the early stage. I had a nice start. Things got rocky after that, as they always do, but
Now,
I had a good start.
talking about Rocky, Jeff, looking back over your own leadership journey, would you say there was a turning point or maybe a number of turning points?
Oh, yes, of course, probably a number of turning points. But I think one of the most pivotal turning points was uh, having a transition from a really good leader that I just mentioned to
Yeah.
having a very difficult, and what I would call even a toxic leader later, in a few years later,
All right.
and working for a very, very challenging boss who was really not nice. He was actually okay with me, but he was not nice to a lot of other people, especially women, which was really uh, it was a big wake-up call. I think it was during that experience that I decided I wanted to become a psychologist, because I wanted to understand why some people became really effective leaders and others became really difficult and toxic.
All right.
So that's
So,
what led me to go back to school and get a PhD in psychology. I think I believed at the time that I would be able to, I guess I would use the word fix this toxic leader. Unfortunately, of course, that was not to happen, but it was definitely a pivotal moment.
and Jeff, what would you say is driving you today?
Um, I mean, what drives me today is not that different from what drove me 20 years ago to become a doctor in psychology and to become a coach and a psychologist. And that is the recognition that leaders have a lot of influence and impact on the individuals they work with, the teams they work with, the organizations, the entire ecosystem. And now, probably safe to say, without exaggerating, even the planet. Um, and my career is currently focused on developing and supporting leaders to be more effective so that they can make a positive difference in the world. And I think I cared about that even 20 years ago when I was trying to fix my horrible boss and I never succeeded. But I have developed my passion for working with leaders, working with organizations, and it still remains my passion even today.
Right. Now, looking into the future, Jeff, what does the future of leadership mean to you?
I mean, the future of leadership is dependent on the next generations. I think, to me, in the current state that we live in, there are two really fundamental shifts that are happening that are crucial to successful leadership, understanding and working with these effectively. One is working with a multicultural, multi-generational workforce. You know, we have now, I live in Europe, but I'm an American and I run a global coaching organization. And I'm very aware when I go to give talks that the audience is multicultural, multi-generational, multinational, that we often have as many as 4 generations working together, 5 generations working together. And so it's really crucial that we learn to work across demographics, across cultures, across races, across generations. So that's a key passion for me. And I think it's key to the future is rising, elevating the next generations of leaders. And then the second issue is that we have a huge technological shift taking place that everyone is aware of around artificial intelligence. And this can be a good thing because productivity improvements have always come with big technological breakthroughs. And we could see in my profession, the coaching world, the incredible benefits of bringing the tools of artificial intelligence to coaching, to leadership development in terms of scaling the ability for leaders to get support through artificial intelligence applications. But at the end of the day, it's still a human world, and we have to become more and more clear on what it means to be human, because the technology is going to very quickly take over a lot of the rudimentary basic tasks that we have all considered to be sort of normal everyday things will be replaced by robots or applications or whatever. So it becomes even more crucial to get very focused on what makes us human, what makes us unique as human beings, and to nurture that in the next generation of leaders. Things like vision, empathy, compassion, understanding the narrative of our identity as human beings, what makes us unique, and then elevating that for multiple generations. I think that's really what's crucial for me.
So, Jeff, what have you learned from your own leadership journey that you consider most important for building future leaders?
I think the most important thing I've learned is to not try to do it alone. It's a paradox that as a leader, I experience myself running an institute. But it's also a paradox that I see my clients, because I do coaching with senior level clients and CEOs, in that the responsibility and accountability for leading falls on the shoulder sometimes of one individual. But the success of the team and the organization and the community is always co-created. It's always the participation of a group of people. And so the most effective leaders are ones that learn how to collaborate with others. And I've learned that myself, that, I may ultimately have some level of accountability or responsibility, but I can't lead by myself. I do it with others. So learning to work with and effectively work with people. And that's all sorts of skills like listening and empathizing and building consensus and exploring how to be innovative together, not how to do it
All right.
yourself. Those are really the key elements in my mind for the future.
Thank you. Now, these are challenging times as the world is stumbling from one crisis into the next. What is your advice for future leaders in terms of challenges? What are some of the challenges they should expect to encounter and hopefully overcome in their career?
I think that the biggest challenge one of the biggest challenges that leaders face is how to empower the next generations and develop them, mentor them, and coach them as quickly as possible. Because we need for young people to step into leadership roles. The days of a pyramid and a hierarchy where you had to wait 20 years before you had a leadership responsibility, those days are over. I have young people that are stepping into leadership roles very early in their careers. And I think it behooves those of us that are baby boomers, I speak for myself, to not be resistant to that evolution, but to actually embrace the younger generations and to mentor and coach and elevate them as quickly as possible. And that's a challenge because it can be disconcerting. It can be frightening to, in some ways, empower others that are maybe 20 years younger or 30 years younger to step into leadership roles. But every time I've seen it done well, it always leads to greater success. So I think, learning to empower, develop, and work with the future leaders early, quickly, and effectively is really key to the success of our organizations.
Thank you. And Jeff, what is your advice for future leaders in terms of skills, especially future leaders who are looking to leave school this year, starting a career? What are maybe one or two critical leadership skills they should look to acquire?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is to create some kind of feedback loop so that early in your career, even in your schooling, you are open and aware of the benefits of feedback. Because we all have blind spots. And as painful as it can be sometimes to hear how you are perceived by others, it will be the best thing that ever happened. It certainly was the best thing that ever happened to me early in my career to get candid, thoughtful, honest feedback early so that you can become aware of your strengths, aware of your blind spots, and recognize that you're not perfect and develop humility. If I had to name one skill, other than maybe good listening skills, good communication skills, I would encourage the next generation to be strong, be competent, be visionary, be innovative, but always be humble.
And Jeff, how would you define humility? What makes for the humble leader? Can you maybe share a couple of qualities and characteristics?
Yeah, I think the humble leader is one that recognizes his or her strengths, but understands and is constantly aware and even vigilant to the reality that they don't have all the answers, that the answers come from both inside them, but inside from others also. So humility is, to my mind, the direct link to wisdom. And the difference between being wise and being smart is people that are smart and knowledgeable have a lot of information, they have a lot of knowledge, they have a lot of expertise. But people that are wise are awake to the reality that they don't have all the answers. I think it's Aristotle who said, wisdom is waking up to realizing what you don't know.
Right. I like that. Leadership wisdom.
Yes.
Now, Jeff, as a mentor to so many future leaders, can you maybe share a success story or two where you mentored an upcoming leader and that person took your advice to heart?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think I've tried to make a career of doing that as much as
Right.
possible. But even early on in my life, when I was in my very first job as a manager of HR, I remember having a young man, African American, who came to me wanting to get involved with us. He wanted a career in human resources, and he wanted to know what to do to get started. And I remember suggesting to him that he volunteer for an organization called the Society for Human Resource Management. And we had a student program. And, I think he was intimidated because, of course, everybody was quite a bit older and he didn't have a lot of experience. But I remember just saying to him, just volunteer, do whatever they ask you to do.
Mm.
Because when you get to know people, when you develop a reputation for follow through and for being responsible, people will turn to you, people will look to you. And now I love that example because, oh my God, it's probably 40 years later, I hate to admit. And he's always posting on Facebook how he looks to me as one of the people that started his career, and he's now a very successful executive at a very big company in the US. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's so fulfilling to know that something simple as just putting a fire under someone young when they start out can have incredible reverberations many years later. I mean, I still do pro bono coaching for people that are trying to get into the coaching profession or trying to move out of a difficult life situation. Um, and it's probably one of the most fulfilling aspects of my career.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it's fantastic advice that you gave to the future leader you mentioned. And I think that's applicable to any upcoming leader, right?
Yeah, it's how I got started. I mean, I work at Harvard as the director of an institute, and people always say to me, how did you end up in that job? And I'm very quick to say that I just started out as a volunteer. I went to a conference. I loved the conference at Harvard. I started looking for ways I could help. I was a volunteer for 3 or 4 years. And then they said, oh, well, maybe we need someone to help with education programming. And here we are 15 years later, and I'm the executive director. So never underestimate what happens when you put up your hand and you say,
That's right.
I'm willing to help.
Yeah, the power of volunteerism. Thank you.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Now, now, Jeff, looking back over your own leadership career, are there any role models of leadership that you encountered and maybe worked with that you would recommend future leaders should study and learn from?
I mean, I think that, yeah, it's hard to say because, of course, over many years, there's many people and that I've looked up to. And I don't want to be political. It's always a little sensitive, but I am a great admirer of Obama. I'm sorry to say, and I'm not sorry to say, I'm proud to say. I think Barack Obama is an extraordinary leader, and I would highly recommend people read the books he's written about his childhood. Um, I'm sure it's probably not uncommon to hear his name, but if people read what he wrote about his life and about how he became a community leader and then ultimately entered into politics, I mean, it's just so inspiring. Um, so that's definitely one that I would look to. And yeah, there's so many. It's hard. It's hard to think about people. Um, I'm currently reading the life of Spinoza in Amsterdam, and boy, that's also a really interesting, inspiring life. I mean, he gave up. That's about sacrifice. I mean, he gave up his life as a religious person in order to pursue the truth of his philosophy. And it's really about the kind of sacrifices some people make to take a stand for what they believe in. And Yeah, so I would look for
Thank you.
any of those kinds of folks are inspiring.
Thank you. Now, how can our listeners connect with you, and where should they follow you?
They can follow me on LinkedIn. They can definitely, I'm always happy to add people on my LinkedIn profile. I am easily reached through the instituteofcoaching.org, which is an affiliate of Harvard Medical School. And there's a website where we offer a lot of programs and conferences, and so they can find me there. I also have a website under my name, jeffreyhull.com, where my coaching career, my books that I've written are available. So I'm pretty easy to find.
Thank you, Jeff.
Happy to be in dialogue with folks that you are
Great.
connected to.
Thank you. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership and reminding us that humility is a key quality for anybody to embrace.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary, important, and especially in today's world, because we live in a very challenging time, and we need the next generation of leaders to step up. But they also need to have a willingness to look at themselves, to develop their self-awareness. So if they can do that combination, then they can be a humble leader, they can have a huge impact, and they can retain their sanity in the space of a very challenging time that we live in.
Absolutely.